Dear colleagues, a new academic year is about to begin, and this is the first of Survival Strategies in TEFL, a series of LinkedIn audio events in which distinguished colleagues share their views on thorny teaching issues. This series aims to act as a forum in which people can express their own personal views freely and share them with the international educator community. In today's discussion, we're talking about a very common problem in class. Most teachers complain that they find it exceedingly difficult to keep their students focused in class. Long gone are the days when the teacher would talk for nearly the whole lesson and learners would take notes and ask questions. If we ever accept that this era ever existed, today's guest is a captivating presenter, an accomplished teacher trainer, and a prolific writer with a particular interest in psychology and education, Nick Michelioudakis. Nick, welcome to the LinkedIn audio event.
Thank you, James. Though I think you do exaggerate a little, but that's okay.
Nick, why do you think students are easily distracted in class?
Well, it's not actually a new problem. I think teachers have been complaining about this for years, and this is something lots of people have tackled. For example, John Medina, I don't know if you've heard about him. I mean, he's written this excellent book. It's called Brain Rules. And he says that we can only be focused on something for around 10 minutes, okay? And then our attention starts to flag. So we need to switch to something else. And this is an important point that we need to keep in mind. Now, lots of people claim that our attention span has shrunk. I don't think this is the case. For example, take books like the Harry Potter books. So people used to say, teachers and parents used to say, oh, my child cannot focus on a text for more than a few seconds. And then the Harry Potter books came along and they discovered that this wasn't the case at all. If we are interested in something, we are prepared to focus on it for a long period of time. What has changed is our tolerance. We have become more impatient. So there was a study that looked at films, for example, and what they have discovered was that the shots, they tend to get shorter. So whereas in the past, in films of previous decades, you had longer, more extended shots. Now the editing is faster. So in case somebody's not interested in a particular scene, they cut to the next one. So that helps maintain interest, okay? So the takeaway for us teachers is that we need to try our best to engage with our students, to capture their attention right from the word go.
Speaking of attention, we know that students tend to spend hours, endless hours, on the social media. Why is it that their attention span is not short there, but it's short when it comes to class?
Absolutely, and this is, I wanted to connect this to something that Matthew Lieberman once said. Okay, so when your students are distracted in class, they are distracted by the social world. And he said this in his excellent book, Social. He said that teachers lose their students to the social world. When they are distracted, they're not distracted because they're solving puzzles or crossword puzzles or whatever. What they're distracted by is social media. So, Instagram and Facebook and so on, because this is what matters to them. In fact, Matthew Lieberman quotes an interesting study. And when they had some people in an fMRI scanner and they asked them to think of nothing, they discovered that certain parts of the brain lit up. And these are the parts of the brain that we activate when we're also asked to think, for example, about our relationships and our colleagues and our friends and relatives and what have you. So the scientists, they call this the default network. Think about it. When you are doing nothing, when you are thinking of nothing, nature wants you to think about your social relationships. That's how important they are. So it's no wonder that our students get distracted by the social media. But of course, we can turn this to our advantage. What is it? Think about the social media. What are three key elements that almost all social media have? They have three buttons: like, comment, and share. We can use these. Think about the activities that we ask our students to do. In many cases, the only person who's ever going to look at what the students have produced is the teacher. But the students, they don't care about us. They care about their friends. But what if, for example, we ask them, let's say, to write a passage about the holidays, or share a picture from the holidays and write a few things about it. And we ask them to share these on a platform like Padlet, for example. And I know you're brilliant with technology, so you know about all these tools and sites and so on. That's the attraction. So you get them to upload this on Padlet where all the classmates can see them, or perhaps you can have a special Facebook page or whatever. And you encourage your learners to comment on the classmates' pictures or texts, or perhaps share a similar picture of theirs, and like them, etc., etc. This is what can make them interested. This is what we can learn from the enemy, the social media. Yeah.
Well, surely it's quite difficult to compete the social media.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, obviously, some of the tips you have just given can be used by teachers. What else could teachers do to deal with it effectively?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. You see, I think one of the biggest problems we face, and this is something I come back to in many of my presentations and articles, is that when we think about our lessons, we tend to think about, okay, what am I going to teach my students? What are the language aims? My aims for the lesson, linguistics, etc. And I think we're looking at the wrong place. So I want to use an analogy here. Something I got from Rory Sutherland. He's an advertising man, the vice chair of Ogilvy and Mather. And you can actually find clips of his on my channel, Psychology. And if you go on YouTube and you type Psychology and ALT, you can find lots of clips by him. And he says, if you look at ordinary objects, like a mug, for example, a mug has a handle, which is good for us because it's been designed with the human body in mind, with the fact that we have opposable thumbs and so on. And it's the same with the door. A door is easy for us to use because it is the right size, because the handle is at the right place for us to use, because it has taken the human physiology into account. Yeah. Think about a screwdriver. Now, a screwdriver consists of two parts. There is the metal part that does the work, and there is also the handle. Now, what I would like to argue is that as teachers, we tend to think of only one of these two. We tend to think of the metal part. When we think of our lessons, we think of the metal part. But if you look at screwdrivers, they're all the same, more or less, yeah? But they can do the same job. The metal part is all the same. Where good screwdrivers differ from ordinary ones is in the handle. So the good screwdrivers, they have an ergonomic handle, a handle that has taken the human palms into account, yeah, the physiology. I would like to argue that when we prepare our lessons, we often fail to take human psychology into account. We only think about the language, the grammar, the vocabulary, the functions, the things that we're going to teach our learners. That's the metal part. And we fail to consider how we are going to make the lesson interesting. How am I going to engage my students? Are they going to be interested in this? Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned engagement, because this is something we tend to forget.
We do. If you think about it, a screwdriver without a handle is unusable. Yeah. So I would like to say that we would like to focus on the handle more. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I totally agree. Yeah, engagement. That's what we want. Because after all, students used to learn English, even on their own, even in the days of the audiolingual method, which we now know is not very effective. Students used to learn English. What we want to do is to engage them in class, to get them to develop a liking for our lessons and for the language. I'm sorry, I tend to get carried away.
Earlier, you talked about technology.
Yes.
Now, can technology play a role in this effort? Can it be a teacher's ally, or is it a foe?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to touch on both of these. There are some studies that show that technology can distract. Okay, for example, there's an excellent book by Adam Alter. It's called Irresistible, and it looks at how people have made technology irresistible. And there were studies where they had people sitting in pairs, people who didn't know each other. So you'd sit down opposite each other and you'd engage in conversation, and they had lots of couples. And afterwards, they were asked to rate how interesting they found the interaction, how interesting they found the person next to them. But here's the thing. In some cases, there was a book next to the people on the table, yeah? And in some cases, there was a smartphone. It wasn't their smartphone. It was another smartphone. And it never rang or anything. And yet, the mere presence of the smartphone made a difference, because the people, when there was a smartphone there, people somehow, they kept getting distracted, and later they rated the interaction as less interesting and the person they interacted with as less interesting, because they kept getting distracted. So the moral here is, if you're not going to be using the smartphones, it might be a good idea to take them all and put them in a drawer, yeah, and so that people cannot even see them, not even on the teacher's desk, inside the drawer, so people cannot get distracted by them. However, I do believe that technology can be our ally. For example, as we saw earlier, by making use of all these little features that social media have been using, you know, the buttons like, share, and comment. That's one idea. But what about taking it a step further? What about gamification? I'm sure you've heard and read a lot about this, because I know you're very interested in technology and you're an expert.
Exactly. I wanted to, my favorite role is becoming the devil's advocate. Okay. What about using devices to play games like Kahoot? Kahoot actually saved the lives of many educators during the lockdown.
Absolutely. Students, they love it. Okay. Yeah. And it has a number of features. Kahoot makes use of a number of features. I would like to take this opportunity to recommend a couple of books on gamification. One is Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal, I think she's called. And the other is Actionable Gamification by a guy called Chou. And what these people say, that there are a number of features that games use that we can use to make activities more interesting. For example, features like a goal, having a goal. And most effective games, they have an ultimate goal that you want to achieve. So in Kahoot, for example, you want to beat the other team. I don't know, you want to be first. Many good games, they have secondary goals where you have milestones, you move up levels, as it were. So in order to keep your goal in view, you know, you may have an ultimate goal, but you also, you move up levels, for example, in Super Mario, I don't know. A good game can give you a sense of mastery, so you feel you're making progress, perhaps by scoring points and moving up levels and so on, or getting titles. Like in chess, for example, you move up from being a candidate master to national master, FIDE master, international master, etc. And very importantly, a feature that Kahoot does not have, but which we can introduce, is the idea of social contact again. The best games leverage this. So if you look, for example, at World of Warcraft, a super popular and successful game, what you have there is people getting together and forming teams to go on quests. So one of them is I don't know, a dwarf, the other one is a wizard, the other one is a ranger, the other one is a, I don't know, a magician, what, I don't know the various categories there. And they have different skills that they can bring to the team. Think about Kahoot and imagine people, not everybody having their own smartphone. Imagine people in threes having one smartphone and engage together. No, it's the answer is B. I know that because it's the preposition, you know. So you have sentences and people talking to each other, interacting with each other as a team. So they're represented in Kahoot with one name, and you pit one team against another. Very good. Yeah. So gamification has an awful lot to teach us about how to can make our lessons more engaging.
Are there any practical tips that any a few hands-on either activities or tips for teachers for the new school year?
Well, there was something else that I wanted to say about technology, which is
yes.
Again, it's listen to that. I don't know if you have ever heard of a book by this guy is called Mike. He passed away recently. Michael Csikszentmihalyi. It's a very funny name, and he's very well known in the social sciences for books like Flow and Finding Flow and so on. So this guy, it's a very interesting notion. The state of flow is a state in which you are performing at the top of your abilities and you lose yourself in this activity. So, you know, top basketball players, when they play, they're in what they call they're in the zone. So time stops for them. They're only thinking about the game. They lose themselves in the activity. Also, very good computer geeks, you know, who play computer games. Again, they lose themselves in the activity. When I play bullet chess online, I lose myself in the activity. And in order to enter this state, it's very interesting. The activity has to be at exactly the right level. It has to be at the level close to your level, but slightly challenging. So it's something that you should be able to accomplish, but it should also stretch you somehow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Think back to Crashing, for example, about the right levels and so on and so forth. Where you might say, okay, what does technology have to do with this? Well, technology can enable us to get into the stage much faster with computer adaptive software, where you know all about this, I'm sure, about tests, for example, which are computer adaptive, and they throw questions at you, and the software gauges your level. So it keeps on giving you questions which are slightly at your level and slightly harder than your level. So you're always performing at the margin of your ability, so just slightly beyond your comfort zone. That's the key. Yeah. And I think the potential there is huge. Because like I said, you know, video games players, they lose themselves in these activities, and we can do the same thing in class. So I'll stop now because I think I talk too much. It's my specialty.
What I really like in what you said is I'll keep the word challenge, because you're absolutely right. Sometimes we just tend to spoon feed our students.
Yes. Yeah.
We tend to make it far more easier than they can deal with.
Yes, and yes. In order to give them this feeling of success and boost the self-esteem and so on, but they also want to be challenged. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. So a new year is about to begin. If we were to sum up today's discussion, what would you tell a teacher who's seriously worried about his or her class?
Well,
their attention span.
What I would say, you know, my main tip, going back to a point I made earlier, is think about the screwdriver. Forget the metal end. Focus on the handle. Think about the learners. What is it that motivates them? What is it that makes them tick? What is it that might engage them? What is it that they might find interesting? And use this. Oh, and also make sure you attend all of Dimitris Primalis talks, because he gives very practical tips on technology and how we can use it to engage learners. That's
Well,
another
thank
tip
you.
I would give them.
Thank you very much. I can't see any questions from the audience. So I would like to thank you very much for attending today's audio event. Don't miss our next audio event on September the 8th on another thorn issue, teachers on the verge of a burnout. What can they do to prevent it this year? With an established teacher, teacher trainer, and communication coach, Michael Robs. Nick Michelioudakis would like to thank you very much for sharing your expertise, and you've given us valuable insights.
Thank you so much, Dimitris, for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time.